If you're interested in what I look like in real life and want to learn more about me, then follow my Instagram page at Joe the Insomniak. Hello everyone, and happy Halloween. Not because I made this video a couple of weeks ago, because Halloween's the best day of the year, and to me, Halloween's every day. Now before I start this video, I want to know if any of you have used Craigslist and ever had anything crazy happen like any of these stories. Also, which channels would you like to see me work with in the future? And now, let's get settled into the video. So about a year ago, I was on Craigslist looking for a Bluetooth speaker. I found one that wasn't too far away from me. It was nice and modern and looked really good. I had to meet up at this guy's house to get it. Now, his house is in a really weird location, deep in the woods. As I'm approaching, I get a really weird feeling about what's gonna happen there. I just don't like it. Now as I'm approaching, the house seems abandoned. I can see some of the other windows are boarded up. I have a bad feeling about this, but a good deal is a good deal, right? So I make my way there, and I'm greeted by a giant of a man. He looks so strange, like he hasn't washed for ages. Not the kind of person you'd expect to see selling a Bluetooth speaker. Anyway, I get chatting to him and he seems okay. I eventually get the feeling that something's a little off about him. He can't wait to show me the basement. Now, I say that's fine, I just need to see the speaker. He tells me to wait while he brings it out. So I'm waiting in his living room and he places it on the table. I say I have to go back to my car. He tries to stop me, but I say I'll be 1 second. I was ready to drive out of there, but I thought, well, he's got the speaker and I do need one. So I quickly head back. As I do so, I hear that he's playing these weird screaming sounds. Honestly, it sounded like somebody is being murdered. I said, watching a horror film, were ya? He says, oh no, just playing some music. Then realizing what I said, he says, oh yeah, I can't get it to turn off. As I look down, I see the speaker's not even on. With that, I bolted out of there like my life depended on it. I drive out of there quicker than I've ever drove before, terrified on the phone to the police. They say they're going to send a unit down there to investigate. A few weeks later, I hear a follow-up from them that they checked out the place and the old man was long gone, and there was nothing in the basement. I really love Craigslist. I've estimated that I've met maybe 300 people from buying and selling stuff, and for the most part, everyone's nice and harmless. However, I did run into 2 creeps who made me rethink meeting strangers online again. Now I was in my early 20s when this happened, and I'm a female. Now it's 2009. I'm staying with my parents for Christmas holidays in a small town in Florida. I'm going through my childhood room, cleaning out the closet, finding a giant CD holder full of maybe 100 really bad CDs. It's 21st century now, no one uses them. I figure I'd try and sell the CDs on Craigslist. I put up a listing. 100 CDs from the late 90s and early mid 2000s, all for $35. The next day, I get an email from a guy named John around 2 p.m. He says that he's in town and that he wants CDs. He says he can pick them up after dinner around 8. I email them back my address and number, telling him to text or call when he's on his way. 8 p.m. comes and goes. I figure I've been stood up, which often happens on Craigslist. No big deal. My dad works for a liquor distribution company and would often do demonstration nights at restaurants and bars, and would come home at bar closing time. This night, he gets home at around 3 a.m. I'm in college and a total night owl, so I'm still up eating junk food, surfing the web, watching horror films. I hear a car pull up, look out the window, and see him sitting in his car eating. He often stops at Taco Bell on his way home and eats in his car, so my mum doesn't know he's cheating on his diet. Maybe 10 minutes later, my dad comes in and shouts my name. "There's someone here to see you. Can you please tell me why a strange man's showing up at 3 a.m? I'm confused by this and go downstairs. I walk outside with my dad, and this guy, who's maybe mid-30s, gets out of his car. He says he's a Craigslist guy who wanted to buy my CDs. My dad goes back in. I tell the guy it's really late to be stopping by, especially without letting me know first. However, since I'm awake, I go grab the CDs. He then proceeds to drone on and on about why he's buying them. He says he's engaged to a woman he loves very much and he wants to make her happy. He said last week someone broke into her car taking all the CDs and it upset her, and he wanted to make it up to her. He looked on Craigslist and found my listing and was excited because I had a bunch of the CDs she used to have. Weird thing is, I didn't list any of the artists and bands because I was lazy. Anyway, he was doing it for a surprise. He said he was staying with his future in-laws somewhere nearby, and their family barbecue ran really late, which is why he never made it to 8 p.m. By this point, I've lost interest and say something along the lines of, "Next time maybe you should call or text though." I hand the CDs, he gives me the cash and I go back inside. 3 days later, I start getting text from an unknown number. "Hey, I don't know my way around town. Care to give me a tour? I could use a massage. Where can I get a massage in this town? You're Asian, do you do a massage? Would you take $50 for an hour? Happy ending." I finally reply, "Who is this?" He said, "Oh, sorry. I brought the CDs from you the other day." I didn't respond, obviously, showing my friends and we laugh it off. Then I get more text. "I still have your address. I'm at the Bank of America near your neighborhood. I got $40, babe. 3 minutes away." Then swearing at me, asking why I'm being ignored. I immediately ran downstairs to tell my mum and dad. It's night time, so we shut off all the lights outside and inside my home. My mum, little brother and I went to my parents' room in the back of the home. My dad hid behind the curtains of the front bay window with a shovel in his hands. A few minutes later, I heard him run down from the front hallway, flinging the door open and running outside. We can then hear lots of faint shouting, so we all walk out the bedroom. By that time, My dad came back in with his shovel, his face red and hair messed up. Apparently, the guy came driving down our street really slowly. My dad recognized his car and went running outside with the shovel, yelling at the guy. He peels off, but never came back or texted me again. Now for the second guy, this happened when I was moving from Florida to DC and was going to load up my car with as many things as I could. However, I lived on the 3rd floor plus a bit of a walk from my assigned parking spot, so I figure I could use some help. I posted an ad on Craigslist. I said I was looking for someone to help me with some heavy items like the TV and desk etc. into my car. Less than an hour's work, and I said I'd take $45. I give my very first responder my number and address and he shows up. He was probably 5'7", 350 pounds of pure fat. The sweat and smell coming off the guy was nauseating. I didn't care, as long as he was getting the job done. While he was carting heavy stuff, I was loading lighter things. Whenever I got upstairs to grab another load, he'd hurry after me so he could walk up behind me. I had the door propped open so he didn't have to worry about kneeling to unlock the door or anything. When he'd follow me up the stairs, he'd make weird comments. Eventually, everything loaded properly, save for some sweat smears on my stuff. I pay him and he drives off. I go back in my place and finish loading and cleaning. I go out maybe 45 minutes later to put another load in my car, and I see his truck is back, parked across the street from mine. He's sitting in the driver's seat staring at me. When he sees me, he looks away. I look over to the window and knock. He rolls it down and I say, "Do you need any help?" I was confused as to why he returned. I mean, I was really confused why he hadn't left the area even. He didn't say anything, just rolled his window back up and drove off. Alright, weird. Of course, 5 minutes later, my phone starts blowing up. I don't recognize the number, so I don't answer. Then the texts come in. Really weird ones about meeting up tonight and doing weird stuff. I get this sinking feeling it's a Craigslist guy. He had never called me about the job when I gave him my number, so I didn't know what his number was. He starts describing the clothes that I was wearing from the day and how much he wanted them. I was scared now. He started dialing my number over and over again. I didn't know how to do the block number thing through my provider, so I had to turn my phone off. Later I was with my guy friend grabbing a bite and turned my phone back on. I get another text from him which is really weird again. The Craigslist creep then starts blowing up my phone again. I ended up being able to block him. Since then, I've never bought stuff on Craigslist again. Not too long ago, I put a post on Craigslist asking to either sell or trade my fish tank for a smaller one. I put my phone number as a contact source, asking for text only. After a couple of hours, I get a text from someone who's willing to trade. We agreed to meet up at a Walmart in a couple of days when we're both free to do our trade. During those days, the guy kept on texting me, involving in small talk. He asked me about my name, where I worked, etc. And me being foolish, I answered his questions. I used Craigslist often. I never really had a bad experience with anyone, so I never really thought anything about this guy. I just saw him as too friendly. I told this guy what car I drove and what college I went to again. Never really responding, stopping at any personal information he wanted. When the day came to meet this guy, he told me he could only meet after 10 PM. I thought that was odd, but agreed to meet him anyway since my 4 fish had been stuck in a 5-gallon jug. So my boyfriend and I drove to Walmart at 10:15 and got there in 20 minutes. The guy texted me and said he was already there in a yellow Camaro. I replied saying we're in a grey than our car, and he texted me and said, "Who is we?" At that moment, I realized something's really off about this guy. I replied by saying my husband and I. He never responded after. My boyfriend and I went around the parking lot a couple of times looking for a yellow Camaro, but never found it. I tried calling the guy, and he ignores my calls. We decided it's best just to leave it. Now I don't know what would have happened had I went there all by myself, or even with my boyfriend there. A few years ago, my partner and I moved from the East Coast to the Pacific Northwest. We didn't know anyone here. We just saved up a decent chunk of money jumping on a plane. I was excited, and we certainly hadn't regretted making the decision. The plan was to stay at some cheap hotels and hostels until we could find work in an apartment. Finding work was actually easy. We had new jobs within a week of getting off the plane. Finding somewhere to live though, that was a nightmare. Everywhere we looked had an incredibly steep requirement for credit scores and minimum household income. We tried more legit sites at first, but after months of hopping around to different hotels, motels, Airbnb places, we become so desperate we went to Craigslist. So, one day I'm desperately scouring Craigslist for rooms when I come across one that seemed a little weird. The poster said that he had a very large home in a very nice neighborhood, and that he wanted to rent out a 500 square foot room for $600 a month with utilities. In this city, it's suspiciously cheap. He also wrote it in a rambling sort of way. It was almost half ad and half open letter. Now obviously, if we weren't so desperate, we would have never considered contacting the man. But we thought that we're playing a good risk of running out of money before we could get somewhere, so we give him a call. On the phone, he sounded relatively normal. He actually suggested that we met up in a public place to talk about the first room. We arranged to meet in a restaurant near the hostel we're staying at. He showed up late, looking surprised to actually see us there. He sat down, speaking for a long time. I say he spoke rather than we talked, because he rambled non-stop about himself, how he was persecuted by everyone in the city. He claimed to be an artist and collector, in between him repeating himself many times about how local people do not understand his passion. He also tells us that The place he's gonna rent us has his personal collection. At one point, he stops talking abruptly, running to the restroom. We took this opportunity to discuss the situation. We knew at this point that he was probably a crazy person, but the threat of homelessness was looming, so we agreed that we should at least see it rather than give way to his eccentricness. He came back to the table sweaty and flustered. Before we could say anything, he said, "I want to show you it right now." We were surprised by this, but we had just discussed seeing it, so agreed. I said to him to text me the address and that we would take public transport to meet him there. He insisted that he drove us there since we didn't have a car. Now, we obviously hesitated to get into his truck. It was obvious even to him, I think, but the previously mentioned desperation was still a thing, and we're pretty sure he wasn't going to try and hurt us. We were right, but it was a bad decision. So we crammed in the front seat of his tiny, rusty, ancient-looking pickup truck. My partner pressed up against the door, and I was uncomfortably close to the driver as he continued his babble about the city and how it's gone downhill, how that everyone he used to know would hang out. Now, at one point, I whispered to my partner to get ready for a possible truck and roll situation. He saw me whispering but couldn't hear me over the roaring wind, and he said something about we were romantic together, reminding him of his youth. We eventually arrive at his home minutes after. He had been technically honest up to this point. His neighbourhood was decent looking. His home was large, ranch style. I note out loud that he had bars on all the windows and several locks on his front door. He said his collection is very valuable to him, and he just wanted to protect it from the thieves. Once he let us in, I made a point of urging him ahead so that he couldn't get a chance to get behind us. We very quickly noticed three things: his art and collection, and the smell. The man's method of art, of which he was very proud, apparently takes lots of child type things, like baby dolls, stuffed animals and whatnot, and attaching weird things to them. There was so much weird stuff everywhere. There was a baby doll which was hanging off a rope, like it had been hung there. Now, his weird stuff was everywhere. He was definitely not concerned about cleanness. The place reeked of mildew. The carpet looked as though it hadn't been vacuumed ever. He then said he loves cast iron pans because you don't have to wash them. There's cluttered pans everywhere with dodgy food on it. We stay behind him, mostly silent, as he stops every now and then to point out his favourite art pieces, to repeatedly tell us he was leading us to the room that was full of his favourite stuff, but he'd have to get people to move it out for us. He opens the door and said, "Voila." I don't doubt the room. As we walk around, every part of it has more of his weird collection everywhere, hanging from the ceiling. Up to this point, we have done our best to try and not overreact to the situation, afraid he's going to snap if we do. I start to notice after a while he was getting disappointed we're not reacting. My guess is that he really expects people to be shocked by this. We told him that the room looks big enough and that we'd like to go back to hotel and think it over. No, he doesn't have much of a reaction to us saying this. When he thinks I'm not looking, he reaches for something out of his pocket, tossing it through the doorway into the dark. I'm afraid it's his car keys, so I use the light on my phone to peek in as we press that room. So we piled into the back of his truck, have a long awkward drive back to the place we had been staying at. He was rambling so much and flustered now. He eventually passes the place that we're meant to stop at. As soon as we get to a red light, we jump out and say thanks, this is fine, great to meet you. Now over the next couple of days, he's constantly texting me saying, "Are you gonna come back? Did you like it?" I said that we've declined, but thank you, it's a nice offer. He then said, "Are you creeped out?" Copy and pasted it 30 times. Now I'm not sure why I was being so polite at the time, but I simply block him and get on with my day.